Good evening, everyone. Yeah, we're starting the recording now, and it's topic 11 commentary. We're getting near the end, and I see that the attendance is sort of dropping off now, and I guess that's to be expected. I mean, there's a lot of commitments to be followed up on, near the end of the term. But again, this is a really important topic, how to manage the value chain. And what's so important about it is that strategically, companies look at their value chain to see where they're going to play or not, because sometimes you bring in other organizations from alliances. Sometimes you choose not to do it yourself, and you may contract it out. And again, I go back to my TELUS experience. Back when I was in corporate development and strategic planning, we made a definite group or organizational strategy that in our value chain that we were not going to get into content production and in the telecom piece, because we were strong in network, and we really wanted to work on the health data side of the business. And over the years that really grew, and you could see where Bell Canada, they decided they were going to get into the content business, and they bought, they have Bell Media now. They bought CTV and the news network, and they produce a lot of content. But having said that, TELUS has come around in the last few years, and what they're doing is they're getting into local content. And why? Because they want to position themselves as a community provider, and this local content is really becoming successful for them, and really giving Canadians and young people and different types of organizations the capability to create film. So it's really working that way. So we're going to talk about that. But one of the key players in all this is Michael Porter. And Michael Porter, really, he coined, the value chain platform, basically. And he's got some really strong ideas about that. And there's a couple of things that we are going to cover that's important, especially for the test, on how you go about that. Because Michael Porter also created the generic strategies, and we're going to talk about that. And based on the generic strategy that you choose, that really shapes how your value chain should be developed. And so that I'll get into that as we get into the slides. But just want to get into it. Are there any questions, before we get started, perhaps about the test or the previous test or the assignment that you just completed, which I was really pleased to see the class really stepped up to that challenge, and there was some great work that got done, and I'm really proud of you guys. All right, so if you have any questions, you can just unmute and ask a question. Okay, we'll get started. So let's talk about test number 3. So test number 3 is going to be scheduled during exam week. It's going to be set up on December the 17th. It's going to run from 7 p.m. to 8:20, and this is near the end of the term. So if there's any problems making that, I have to know, well in advance to make some different arrangements, because there's very little time after that to be able to get marks in and to process everything. So this date's going to be really important to make. So please, schedule this into your calendars right now. And again, it's going to be run online with the Respondus lockdown and webcam capability. So again, I encourage you to have that all tested, well before the test, so that that you're not going to have any issues. All right, you're going to be able to access that test again in Blackboard at topic 13, and it'll appear, at that time of 7 p.m. on December the 17th. And again, it's really important. These commentary PowerPoints that I'm producing, and I'm giving you the links to these webinars. They really highlight what to focus on for studying. So that's the really key part, to have a look at this. And again, it's the highlighting and the emboldened print and the golden keys that you see throughout those presentations that should alert you to, hey, that this particular area is really important, and I should focus my study on that piece. Again, the PowerPoints that are offered by Robbins and his other cohorts for the e-text of this chapter are excellent. And they're very rich in information that will help you really understand that content and do well on the test. And again, there will be practice tests, and they're located in topic 12. This is an error here. That was for test number 2, but the practice test, and this is the link to get to those practice tests. And then the participation activities are even more crucial in these last 4 topics to really understand, because doing good work in that will allow you to do very good work and prepare for the Amazon group team effort, because some of those questions will have those very same types of requirements to satisfy. And again, you're going to be choosing which questions that you're going to answer. You're not to answer all the 29 questions for that assignment, for that group assignment. And then, so review those participation activities, and then you get back to the Blackboard slide decks that are in those topics, to pick up additional information. And then when you want more detail, go to some of those topic video presentations. And of course, you can start reading on the e-text if there's something else that you don't quite get, right? And again, if you have any questions, please contact me, through email, and I'd be happy to do that. And then what I'll do is I will, broadcast the response on the Blackboard announcements so that everybody can take advantage of that, right? So there's no such thing as a not so good question, because I'm sure there's always 2 or 3 or 4, colleagues of your in your class that probably want to ask the same question, and it really brings a service to the actual course. Okay, all right. So again, we're looking at this evolution of management principles. And really in topic 11, we're really in the sort of the quantitative part and the systems part. And I keep on telling you that, learn a little bit about systems thinking. I mean, it's going to help you, especially, when it comes into play with artificial intelligence, because systems really sets you up to understand patterns and to understand how to draw information, from those patterns. And that's really what AI does for you, in big data and everything else. So it would really give you a leg up on any kind of career that you plan to get involved in, if you understand a little bit about systems thinking. Now again, chapter 13 of the PowerPoints, it covers operations management, but there's 2 key objectives in this chapter 13 that's going to help you, really understand topic 11. And this is the next slide, defining the nature and the purpose of value chain management, and describing how value chain management is done. And again, this is a really important component of strategy. And it's a really important component of understanding, where you need to focus, especially if you're going to be involved in any kind of supply chain. And some of you are probably going to be working in organizations that are part of global supply chains. And if you understand value chain, then you're going to understand, the key fundamentals around the actual supply chain itself. Okay, so those are the key objectives, so that when you're going through those slides, you'll know which ones are important. And other slides in this chapter were in previous topics, and you don't need to really study them as much, because we're really looking at the test number 3 that you're going to be coming up against. So when you look at the value chain and then how that relates to supply chain, the first strong question is, how do I choose suppliers? And again, you're going to be doing participation activity in a group. And again, there's 4 different participation activities to do in this particular topic. And 2 are 2 group team type participation activities. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to continue to improve the effectiveness of our organization, but now focusing on business partners. So let's just take Amazon, for instance. Amazon has a whole list of resellers. But regardless of them being private entities, they're partners, they're business partners in the Amazon supply chain. And when something goes wrong with one of those business partners, guess what? It affects the overall brand of Amazon. So they have to behave like one virtual company. And to understand how you can manage that will really give you some advantages in creating competitive advantage from supply chain organizations with other supply chain organizations. So you'd have to ask, who should we choose to be part of our supply chain? And there's some criteria that you should really go through when you choose these partners. And how do we improve that supply chain? And the better that you can improve that supply chain, again, translates into creating stronger competitive advantage to the point where we went through the RIO, and what you'll learn with that is you're trying to get as close to sustainable competitive advantage as you possibly can, and it's just as hard to retain competitive advantage as it is to build competitive advantage. So just remember that. So taking a look at the value chain, the supply chain is a value chain. So you start with the supplier of raw materials or parts to be assembled. You put it together, and then you distribute it, and then you go through a retailer of some sort or different types of channels, and then you have to interact with the customer. And then there's the return side of that, where in what's really big in today's world is taking back things to fix. And how do you manage that end of it to make the customer really feel that, hey, they trust you and they know that you're gonna have their back if something doesn't quite go right with the product or service that they purchase from you. Okay, so let's just look at IBM's approach to supply chains. And IBM's been a forerunner, and they really they started back a few years ago with Maersk, which is a global shipping company, and created a joint venture to create blockchain coding to be able to make the process of supply chain a lot more effective and a lot more efficient. But here's what they're looking at. They use AI for predictive capability and better profitability. They use planning analytics. They unify the teams. They align logistics and inventory planning, and they use AI and advanced analytics for demand planning and forecasting. And I'm going to talk about this particular association of organizations that come together and the type of planning that they do in a few slides just later on in this presentation. But we are in the age of AI. And it's just going to get more and more sophisticated. It's going to get a lot more complicated, I believe, and but a lot more effective. And the more that you can understand these things in your daily work, the better you're going to be prepared to be able to make a difference in whatever organization you work in. Okay, so here's I'm getting into the participation activities. So 2 of them are individual submissions, and the last 2 are group team submissions. All right, so that's your to-dos for this week. There's no surveys to do. There'll be, I think, 2 surveys remaining in topic 12, and then you're all done with those surveys, right? So let's get into that. So the first one, 11A, individual exercise. I want you to go back to your communication style, Pearson Rebel survey, and how does this compare with your communication as you work in your group right now? And I want you to kind of discuss the 3 actual working style attributes that you can compare to your survey results, and why do you think these attributes affect your communication style. So really what I'm asking you to do is really kind of take in a top of mind of how you saw yourselves in these surveys, and then how are you actually behaving right now and reporting on it. And that will give you a better idea of your baseline, is that you may look at being at a certain level of attribute, but then now it all comes it all comes to bear when you're actually doing it, right? So I want you to do some little critical thinking around that. The next individual exercise, again, is looking at communicating supportively, in your Rebel survey, and take a look at your actual working communication with your group. And then why do you think this attribute affects your communication style? And oh, by the way, doing this work is going to set you up in your individual assignment that's due on December 6th, and where you're looking at reporting on, how did you do and how did the team do, and in completing the Amazon group project. All right. So these two participation activities of individual exercises will really kind of prep you for that individual assignment. So I think that's assignment number 4, and Amazon's 5, or Amazon is 4, and that one's Amazon's 5, and that one's 4. So those are the numbers. Okay. The next one now is really where you're having to take a look at, how do you select, different suppliers in your value chain or your supply chain, and you're going to use again Tim Hortons. So we're going to get you to do a SIPOC diagram for Tim Hortons, and when you get to this process, I want you to highlight, and I've got some help for you here in one of these slides. Just actually do this in an illustration and not just list it for process. And why is because from the experience I had when I did business process improvement, when we had these post-it note stickers on the wall of the process, the team could really, from a pictorial point of view, really get a sense of what was going on, and you can make really quick changes. If you just have a piece of paper that runs through the steps, it's harder to communicate. It's harder to really kind of get a grasp of how this all comes together. So again, this is to create this flow chart for this step, and then go to this link, and you can't get to this link on this presentation. You'll have to go to the topic because this is a picture of that activity, and complete this for just one of Tim Hortons suppliers of your choice. All right, so it could be the bean supplier, it could be the donut material supplier for donuts, or whatever that is, and then refer to this particular presentation or article. It's what is a SIPOC, and diagram, and the 7 steps to map the business process so that you can do this quite nicely. All right, so I'm going to tell you more about SIPOC as we go through, but I wanted to kind of spill the beans on what deliverables are due for this topic. All right, the next group project is to really talk about an ideal or a model supplier for Tim Hortons, and actually go through these 10 attributes, and I want them numbered in that sequence so that when I'm marking, I can it'll be really easy for me to really get a sense of if they were done properly. So what that is, and that's 11D, and the thing is that please number these things from 1 to 10 just the way that they are. You can find let me see here, in this link, the actual template, and then produce that. All right. Okay. So this is all part of operations management, and again, like the supply chain and the actual value chain is really a form of operations management. That's where you really get to understand that, and so that you've got to really get back to what we were learning in the previous topics about what transforms and adds value to that, and that's what it's all about, right? The more value for the least amount of cost that you can or price that you can provide to the customer, the more competitive you're going to be, and the more that you'll be able to sustain this business that you're doing. Okay, and here in this transformation, you start with inputs that are raw materials, or maybe they're basic components of an assembly, and then there's inputs that are information or people. So that's what this is all about. So This is to get back to, this is all part of value adding, for each component. It's part of the value chain, and then taking that to the next level of, the supply chain itself. Okay, so transformations. Again, we know that this is important, that, the exchange transportation is what happens on the retail side. The store is given money, and the customer gets, a product or a service, right? And that's the exchange. All right. And then what are the four value creating activities of retailers? Well, providing the product, with key features and benefits, the pricing, providing wider range of product offerings, and then improving and innovating products as well. Okay, so this is all that, this isn't new. We've covered this in previous topics, but it's a good add-on to, understanding, the value chain and then the supply chain. Okay, so what do we need to know about the value chain in topic 11? Well, that's where we start getting into a SIPOC. And what does SIPOC stand for? The supplier, the input, the process, the output, and the customer, right? And so that this diagram is a visual tool, and it's for documenting a business process. And here is that, why are we doing this? Well, this is how we understand how we can make the value chain leaner. So when we did business process improvements around the service delivery service that in TELUS, we actually, reduced the cost from 20 to 40% in certain areas of that process. So by seeing it and looking at it as a diagram, then you have a better picture of what's going on. We can make this process easier. We are delivering quality products to our customers. You can improve the way you manage suppliers. You can get a really good idea. Are your suppliers doing the right thing? Are they really providing the brand strength that you're looking for? Do we know the personas of our customers? So we talked about the ideal clients, and are there any inefficiencies that we can improve on? So these are all the reasons why we're doing this SIPOC, right? And then take that into Porter's value chain. I talked about Michael Porter, and here's you can see a lot of highlights here. In Porter's value chain, you can see that it's broken here. These are typical primary activities, inbound logistics, operations of, maybe manufacturing, whatever, then outbound logistics, marketing and sales and service, and then ultimately profits. And then there's typical support activities. So the firm infrastructure, it supplies infrastructure to all these links in the chain. Human resources supports all the people in those links in that particular chain. Technology, procurement. So again, which means that you have primary activities and then you have support activities, right? So that's what that's all about. A little bit about Porter, because he ties this all together. We talked a lot about Porter's 5 forces, and then we're gonna bring in Porter's 4 generic strategies. He coined the term the value chain, and Porter is all about competitive advantage. All right, because that's what strategy is all about. So again, these particular slides here now are for your use. To really get a sense of what Porter's value chain is all about. I'm not going to go into them in detail, but you should understand, how does your organization create value? So getting back to the TELUS value chain that we looked at from a strategy point of view, we decided that TELUS was going to create value not by adding content so that our customers can take advantage of it. This is at the time that it happened, but by developing services that are far beyond what was given at the time, to be able to make health organizations the best that they could be. And that's how we saw our part in the value chain for TELUS, right? And again, how do you acquire the raw materials or the components? How do you bring that together? But again, the more value an organization creates, the more profitable it's likely to be. And the more value you provide to your customers and you build competitive advantage. That's the whole idea. And that the SIPOC is a tool to be able to look at that value chain and really comment on the components and the effectiveness and the alignment and the capability of all those components. And that's what that tool is going to help you do. Okay, so again, here's just another depiction, but you can see that there's some nice yellow arrows here to really understand what support activities are and what primary activities are. And oh, by the way, this illustration is flipped around in the first one I gave you, but it gets to, at the endpoint of competitive advantage and profitability. It's just illustrated in a little bit different way. Okay, so it gives you a panoramic view of the business landscape. All right, a value chain analysis. And the thing is, it really provides some robust strategic planning, and I hope that I kind of give you an intonation around that when I talked about the strategic planning, people looking at the actual value chain, that was created for TELUS. Okay, so again, those activities in the value chain, they're the building blocks of competitive advantage. And again, it's all about making choices. And I told you about strategic planning. It's just as important to understand what you're not going to do as what you are going to do, because there's only a certain amount of scarce resources that you want to make the most of. So you really have to make these key decisions in strategy to be able to leverage the resources and the capabilities that you have to be able to build, the strongest competitive advantage you possibly can, to be successful in the marketplace. Okay. And we're going to talk a little bit about, upstream suppliers and downstream suppliers, because we're going to talk about integration, in a few other slides. So be aware of that piece. Okay. All right. So what are the overall benefits then of value chain analysis? Productivity, achieving cost savings, enabling differentiation, and that's the uniqueness, to be able to, be different from everybody else. And people will flock, a lot of people will flock to Apple products because they're unique in their own way, and they bring in different advantages than similar products that are created by other competitors, because they have these alliances where they can bring in additional value add to the customer. And one of them in particular, I know that a lot of smartphones cover GPS, but I mean, my smartphone, my GPS probably is one of the most useful features that I have on my phone. All right, and then again, enhancing customer satisfaction. All right, so a little more about that. I'm not going to go through these slides too much, but I'd like you to do that. But remember, I told you that depending on your strategy, it will affect your value chain itself, right? So let me read this. All right. So your organization's value chain should reflect its overall generic strategy, and so here's two different strategies that are shown. One is cost advantage. So say Walmart, and one is differentiation advantage, like Hewlett-Packard. Hewlett-Packard make very robust, components and computers, and it really kind of separates them from the rest. All right, but you need to understand that if you take on a cost advantage strategy, your value chain is going to be a lot different than if you take on a differentiation advantage, because the differentiation advantage is going to have a lot to do with making sure that it is unique and the performance there and the quality is there at a different level of focus than it would be if it was just looking at cost advantage, right? So this is really a really important aspect to understand, especially for test number 3. Okay. So again, here's the breakdown. So, if you're looking at cost advantage, so you want to compete. So here's some like Amazon or Walmart or McDonald's, Ford, Toyota. But if you're looking to create superior products and service, use differentiated advantage. So you're talking about Apple and Google and Samsung. So here's, different steps, about, how you're looking at this value chain. And this is going to determine, what your value chain is going to look like, and the value chain from cost advantage is going to be much different than the value chain for differentiation advantage. All right, so that's where that is. So again, Porter's value chain, it's a useful strategic management tool is what you're looking at. Okay, so that's that piece. Any questions about that at all? You can unmute and ask me a question. Yeah, I'm looking at everyone in the class here. So any questions at all? Okay, how are we doing? Thumbs up? Is things going okay? Okay, good. All right. So then let me tell you now, but I'm just going to switch gears a little bit. So we talked about Amazon, we talked about TELUS, uh, but I want to talk about knowledge intensive firms. And why? Is because they have a different value chain, right? Because they have a different strategy, because the types of service that they provide are different. All right. So what is a knowledge intensive firm? Well, it's a service-based organization that solve complex problems. So take a look at maybe a global management consultancy. They have great human capital and expertise, that few organizations have in their areas of expertise. They create value through knowledge. So they amass a whole pile of knowledge. So, I mean, if you want to know a lot about AI, all you need to do is say, go to a Price Waterhouse Coopers website, and I'm sure you'll find all kinds of information, that they put together on how AI can enhance management, right? And then and then they're very innovative, and they have a lot of initiative, and they continue to build competence, right? So look at the examples: pharmaceuticals, software, information technology. So those are the kind of companies that are knowledge intensive firms. All right, and what it is that there's two things to understand, and it's much like it's much like economics as well. There's knowledge stock, so that's the expertise and the knowledge that they bring together, and it's their library universe of information that they can sell to other organizations. And then there's the flow of knowledge, the consultancy type, the facilitation part, where they would share that and help an organization work through one of their issues or whatever. All right. So again, knowledge, skills, and experience of the staff vital to the development of intellectual capital. And knowledge is, sometimes, if it's protected, difficult to imitate. And we're getting back now to this VRIO, as we're in, imitatability. It gives them competitive advantage. And then both knowledge stocks and flows are important. So know the difference. All right. The difference between flow of knowledge and the stock of knowledge. So this is the storage, of intelligence. And then this is the use of intelligence, to help provide, they're sharing them to utilize them to improve customers' processes and whatever, right? Okay, so here's where, their particular, supportive pieces are, the knowledge system, the knowledge culture, and then these are the actual, primary pieces in that supply chain. So, you understand that piece. All right. So how do you improve the value chain? Well, through quality assurance, preventing defects, lean manufacturing, supply chain management, excuse me. And this is all where, you bring all these key pieces into supply chain where, in all intents and purposes, you're improving the value chain within that supply chain, right? It's roughly the same thing. Okay. And one of the key areas is total quality management. We haven't talked very much about total quality management, but again, Edward Deming is one of the pioneers of quality, and he brought in a lot of expertise around doing that to be able to increase the value of every component in that value chain, right? And what are some of the, the key attributes of total quality management? Well, continuous improvement, we in Japanese call this Kaizen, and then employee empowerment is how, the quality circles of people that come together are trained to be able to work together to brainstorm and to improve, on a continuous improvement basis. They're motivated to do that because they feel that this is they're sharing in that vision. And then the focus on customer satisfaction, right? So that you can see what continuous improvement Kaizen is all about, and that that really comes into play. Okay, so you should know something about William Edward Demings. He was really the father of quality. It was it was about 6 or 8 of them that were the pioneers, and some of them I can think of are Crosby and who else? Yeah, there's I'll have a list of them. I'll get to you if you're interested. But anyways, this is the guy. And here's what you need to remember about what William Edwards Deming is saying, is that if you focus on costs go up and quality goes down, because it's, you're just looking on the hard side of what you can do. This is key, right? But if you focus on quality, quality goes up and costs will fall. And I'm going to show you an analogy of of inventory later on, if you're looking at quality, it makes you look at how you can improve things, and when you improve things, you're actually improving cost as well. So we're going to cover that. But one of the biggest things that came out of William Edwards Deming's work is Deming's 14 points, right? And here's what they are. Consistency of purpose. You're looking at a new philosophy that everybody adapts. You look, and you're not really looking at mass inspection now. You're trying to get ahead of that, so that quality is built in. It's not like you look at it at the end and you say, oh, we got to fix this. The end practice of awarding business on the basis of price tag, find the problems. So I want you to go through that. But what he came up with is what we use in TQM is called the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Like he started with Plan, Do, Study, Act, and then now the quality organization has changed it a bit, calling it Plan, Do, Check, Act. And we used to, this was a big part of our life at TELUS, when I was a part of that. So what do? You recognize what that problem is. You put together a plan, you define that problem better, you develop performance measures, you analyze it, you look at some causes, you implement some solutions as due, you evaluate, you're checking, are they working? And then if it's working, then you standardize that solution and you put it into play. So this is a key piece. So Deming's view, Plan, Do, Study, Act, but now if you look at the quality movement, it's Plan, Do, Check, Act. All right. Okay, and then again, this is another key things that you should know. And again, there's going to be a question, on the Amazon project that you could answer. What are the 8 wastes? Overproduction, unnecessary inventory, waiting, unnecessary transportation, overprocessing, inefficient work methods, producing defective products. You pay for that if you have to, return the product into the shop and have to fix it on your own cost as a supplier. Underutilization of employee knowledge and skills, and that's why employee empowerment is just so is just so important in quality, right? So here's the same thing, but only a little bit of a different illustration. So you got to find and eliminate these 8 forms of waste. So transportation. Just a little bit more definition around each one of them, right? To be able to find out what that's going about. So here's this illustration that I wanted to show you about, how quality can save you money, right? So this is an analogy here. So and it's about inventory. So you have a lot of inventory, equate that to a high level in the lake, right? And if you've got a high level of inventory, then you can get around problems. by stocking, like especially inventory work and inventory in work and process situations where a machine's not quite doing very well, so you stack some of its output beside it, to keep up with the other chain link, that works from the output from that machine without stopping the process. So what happens is if you start dropping the level inventory, then all of a sudden you start identifying the problems. And then by identifying the problems, then you fix them. That's the quality aspect. So what it is then, you'll have less problems and a lower level of inventory. And, I keep on telling you that, inventory makes up 35 to 65% of manufacturing costs. And if you can lower inventory, it goes all the way to your bottom line in terms of more profitability, more money to invest with, all these other things, right? So that's the kind of analogy that's working. So again, what does SIPOC do? It looks at these particular types of the steps going through, and I put this in. Hang on, right here for Tim Hortons. All right, so you can see that suppliers, the inputs, the process, the outputs, the customers. This will help you do your work for 11C. Okay, so that will help you do that piece. And again, SIPOC is it's another template, it's another canvas, and just compare that to my hero here, Alexander Osterwalder, where you can have a simple one-page piece that really shows you what your business model is all about, and then what your value proposition is all about, and you can use this vehicle to work with all the organizations in each link of that value chain to let them understand what will make profitability, what will who are we selling to and why and what's important and all those things. Okay, all right, so again, this is a key thing. Help answer the following questions. You make the value chain leaner, you make the process easier, you're delivering quality product to customers, you improve and the way you manage suppliers, and then you make sure that the suppliers are aligned going through. You're actually working like one virtual company, and you need to know the ideal customers that you're supplying to and why and what they need, and then know where the inefficiencies are. So those are the key things. This is why you do this piece. And now on your topic 11, I want you to kind of pick a particular supplier and go through and comment on each one of these. And I'm not looking for 10 pages, just a one pager, but just what is it about the competencies of one particular supplier for Tim Hortons? What is it about their capability in terms of capacity of service? What is it about their commitment to quality? Those kind of things. Okay. All right, because that all comes into play when choosing supplier. The supplier analysis. What are they good at? What are their certifications? How long are you going to work with them? Maybe sometimes you take a supplier in on a trial basis to make sure. Other times, decide that, hey, you can make this into a strategic supplier and look at a win-win across helping them grow their business while they help you grow their business, and they're more like a one source supplier to you, like they don't supply to your competitors and those kind of things. And then the number of suppliers, and think of it, when you have a lot of suppliers, you have a lot of administration costs. So the more that you can lower the number of your suppliers without affecting your availabilities and your vulnerabilities, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to have stronger relationships and you're going to have stronger suppliers with more buy-in to what you need to do. Okay, so what that comes down to then is that how do you identify suppliers? And a lot of times, you'll go to a competition to do that. All right. And so what you're doing then is that you're looking at how you're going to appoint a vendor and supplier. And you establish, what's the criteria? What do you really need from these people? You look at a potential list, and then one of these areas, this is a request for information. You challenge them. So you send out a request for information to see, maybe you've missed something, or maybe you don't know something about that industry. And that will tell you a lot about the suppliers and what they can bring to the table. And then once you do that, then you can really recalibrate, your request for proposal, so that you're asking for very specific things that's going to really add to your competitive advantage, right? And then you evaluate that process. You create a short list, and then you actually select your supplier or two. And again, when you do appoint that supplier, you're looking at a detailed agreement, a customized service, a long-term contract, shared interest in key objectives, a customized service, and how you're going to exchange information, to make sure that your intellectual property is protected and all those other things. Okay. And when you do that, you need a diverse team to be able to look at all aspects of what the suppliers do and how you're going to interact, from a legal point of view to finance and everything else. And then here's some more information on that piece. So the thing is that how do you choose a supplier? Competitive bids, number of suppliers, and then choosing suppliers during the concept development of what you're doing, kind of thing. Yeah, not going to talk about that. But here's something I kind of intonated, and that once you do have these suppliers, there's this thing called CPFR. And what it is collaborative planning, forecasting, and replenishment. So everybody in the supply chain is working from the same information overall. And there's a platform that they input to, and then everybody's can validate what's going on, and it makes the overall supply chain or value chain a lot more robust, going through. And this is a common piece, the CPFR. I mean, there's expertise around that to make this really work. So that I wanted to tell you about. And then, if we look at, the way, especially the Japanese have modeled businesses and modeled alliances, Keiretsu is really important. You can see that it's highlighted. I want you to know about that. And what it is that, it exploits the synergies around this alliance to make sure that, it's 2 + 3 is 7. All right, those kind of things. And one of the best examples of a Keiretsu is the Toyota production system, of mutual learning. And here, if you take a look at, the effects of interdependence. Remember I told you, strategic planning is all about the interdependencies. So if you can bring in partners, that have this capability to be able to build all this synergy that no one can duplicate, no one can, imitate, then what you've done then is you've created this competitive advantage that, is somewhat sustainable, right? So if you have, a high level of interdependence, and you have a high level of partner dependence, you'll get really an effective relationship, right? And if you don't have, a good organization's dependence and a partner's dependence, well, then you'll get no caring, apathy. So that's the thing that you need to look at. And then, that goes on to, well, what do you do in some cases? Do you go out and you find a partner, or do you do it yourself? So if you're going to do it yourself, that's insourcing. If you're going to go out and find a partner, that's outsourcing. All right. And so in insourcing, you're using your own, your organization's own personal or resources to accomplish that task. But here's the thing, especially in supply chains, you never, ever, ever outsource your core competencies. All right. If you take a look at Apple, Apple's design and Apple's marketing is all controlled by Apple. They don't share that with anybody. All right. And Foxconn, is a Chinese company that does everything else for them, right? So if your core competencies make up your competitive advantage, and if you share those core competencies or outsource that, you're training someone to compete with you later on. I mean, that's what you need to look at, as you're going through that piece. All right. And here's some analysis where you'll take a look at, insourcing versus outsourcing is really make or buy analysis, that make it simple. And there's different advantages, costs of making versus buying. Well, when you make, you've got all this stuff, extra labor and monitoring. When you buy, it's just a purchase price and what you have to look at. And the thing is, when you buy, you also lose some control, right? And so you need to look at all those pieces. All right. So here's some concerns, security. So maybe you're more vulnerable, loss of control. You have these unplanned costs, loss of ownership, and then you don't have business knowledge in that area. So again, those are the kind of things that you need to look at. And if you take a look at understanding Keiretsu networks, you're boosting profits and you're dropping costs, because those organizations are all helping each other to create the most value for the customer overall in the value chain that they make up a part of. So you can see here, I've given you a little more information on Keiretsu to understand that, and take a look at how, all the different partners on how they interact across the entire value chain. And again, in some cases, there's even a bank, that's associated with all this, especially in global trading operations of Keiretsu. There's a particular bank that will fund all these areas, so it makes them stronger and those kind of things. So here's another example of that as well. Okay, so again, you evaluate these suppliers on different criterias and on different weightings. And I think we've covered this in operations, in I think topic 5, so that, here's a different weight. So you multiply the score times the weight, and then you'll get an overall score, and then you can compare one supplier against the other. Okay, so let me talk about, business integration. I mentioned this earlier about, the vertical part of the business and the horizontal part of the business. So if you take a look at vertical integration, all right, you can see here that somebody produces a garment, all right, let's say a shirt, all right, that's the final product. Well, let me get back. I'll give you a real good example, right? So when I was a kid, I worked in a bakery, and this bakery was in a small community, and it was a few hours from Toronto. And Weston's was the big big bread producer in Ontario. And what started happening is that Weston's can actually bake bread, put them in transports, and get them all the way to this community and sell them at a cheaper price. All right, and so what did this bakery do? They produced bread, the final product. But what they did, and pastries and everything else. But then what they did was they went out and they bought confectionery stores, convenience stores. And so what that meant then, they could control, their sales to those convenience stores. So that's what they call forward vertical integration. All right. But let's take that further. Let's just say that, say Weston's is a big producer and flour is a big part of, their raw materials. Well, there's nothing wrong with Weston's, buying an actual flour mill, right? And then what they do is they secure their supply, and then they secure a cheap supply. I know, by the way, they probably sell to their competitors at a higher price, right? So that's backward integration, all right? And the thing is that it could go so far as, they own, Weston's owns the mill, but then they might own, 50,000, wheat acres of farming in Alberta, right? So it gets right all the way backward integration, right? So that's the vertical type of integration. But then there's also horizontal integration, okay? So let's take a look at say Canadian Tire, right? So Canadian Tire is a company, and they they uh, uh, they started selling workwear, right? So what did they do? They were competing against Mark's Work Wearhouse. So what did they do is they bought Mark's Work Wearhouse. So now you know Mark's Work Wearhouse is part of Canadian Tire. That's horizontal integration, all right? And then there may be a, a, a like a actual parts company, so they'll buy that parts company so that they can have more of a robust automotive parts, right? Or buy their second competitor. So when they do that, they're going across the market. So that's a horizontal integration, and they do that through mergers and acquisitions or procurement kind of thing. So there's vertical integration, and then there's horizontal integration. And again, that all applies again to how does that come together on a supply chain. Okay, that's an important piece. And then what you need to understand is supply chain management itself. All right. So what you have in supply chain management is you have the overall logistics, where you have suppliers, you have some transportation to get to the assembly or manufacturing. Then you have storage, and then you transport, and you house it, and then you go through retail channels and other channels and sell. But alongside of that, there's a whole part of planning and improving that drives all these logistics. And at the end of it, there's all this data analysis to find out, how's this all working? Where are we vulnerable? Where are we not vulnerable? Where are we making profit? Where are we not making profit? What are the bright spots? What are some of the vulnerabilities around what we have to do? And that makes overall supply chain management. And again, what does it do? It's all about improving the competitive advantage of the value chain that it represents. Okay, something else to understand now. What's become more important in the last, I'd say, 10, 15 years is that, logistics runs forward and it runs backwards. Okay, so what that means is, you'll get a product to customers, but sometimes the product fails. So you need a way of bringing that back in so that somebody can fix that and then send it back to the customers. And that's what we call reverse logistics, and sometimes, you have to work all the way back to the value chain to find the problem. All right. And this is key. So understand, what reverse logistics is all about. And it has two definitions. Some call it reverse logistics. Some call it backwards logistics. All right. And you can see here is that, from the stores, you'll either get defective returns or, excess product returns. Maybe, they bought too much and they want to send some back, and that happens. And what wholesalers will do, they'll say, all right, we'll take that back, but we'll charge you, an administration fee for taking it back, or seasonal returns. And then so the defective returns, they get fixed and refurbished, and then they probably go to a discount channel. But when they're going, from this area down to this area, that's backward logistics. And you can see it's highlighted. I want you to know about it. All right. And then there's not going to talk about that piece. But again, if you've got end of life products, and you've got a closed loop supply, it means that you sell this piece, and then it has a useful life with the customer, and it goes to a landfill. So that's really what that's all about. And I kept on talking about being good ancestors and looking at triple bottom line, and the designs have to be evolving in terms of there should be extraction of the valuable components to reuse or repurpose, reuse, repurpose those other R's, and so that it just doesn't, you can get more out of this piece. But when you see this in the product life cycle curve as well, though, you want to think about, okay, how can we keep this going, right? And then maybe you design a few more features in that design to sell that same type of product, or you go to different markets that don't have it. Okay. Okay, and the thing is to know about supply chains is competition is no longer between companies, it's between supply chains. I mean, that's what it's all about. So, you've got Wayfair competing against Amazon, against Alibaba, against Temu. You've got different supply chains. It's not just one company anymore. Okay, and here's the things that you got to remember. And now we're just getting into a little bit of enterprise planning and those kind of things. So here's what you need to know about enterprise requirement planning. It's the software that integrates finance, human resources. So what you'll see is, or they call them enterprise resource planning as well, like SAS or SAP, IBM have resource planning. There's several different pieces out there, and what's going on is some contributing pieces that supply information, to this enterprise requirement planning, to that platform. So radio frequency identification devices, RFIDs, are placed just about on every product now that goes through a supply chain. And at one point in time, they were fairly expensive, but in today's world, RFIDs are cheap. And what's going on is that they can provide more and more information now, real time, so that you may have an RFID that will report on if it's been violated, if the package has been violated, where it is, those all the things that can help bring the supply chain transparent and more effective and real time status on what's going on. So you'll have frozen foods. It's on a ship in a container, and what will happen is that an RFID type device, if the refrigeration ceases, signal will automatically go out to the supply chain command center, and then they will make some changes to be able to get that thing going so they don't spoil thousands of dollars of frozen food, those kind of things. And then you have electronic data interchange, and that's sort of a virtual network. It's no one can get into that. It's and you can exchange information, and that'll bring us to blockchain when I'm talking about the overall global supply chain movement. Okay, so what is ERP? Well, single computer system. Everything goes into it. And it integrates key customers and their suppliers, integrates the database. It's all the same data, so you have one strict warehouse, so you don't have data corruption, and then a set of best practices for carrying out business processes. So why do you do this? Well, you can integrate financial information right across, so you can see here's the value chain, and the ERP will monitor and manage the whole process. So it's standardized and speeds up things. You can reduce the inventory, and it's standardized HR information as well. And so it's a single source of data. Like I said, data corruption is a big thing. It's a real-time system. It increases productivity, reduces operating costs, improves internal communication, and a foundation for future improvement. Okay, so those are the kind of things that you should know about that. But here's the thing. I was at TELUS when they brought in an ERP called SAP. It's a German platform. It took about 4 years. So what's required? It's a major transformation. And I keep on bringing you back to this change curve and transformations. Right here, is that, here's where, you have the donuts and the coffee and you introduce the project and things are really, really going nice and everybody's happy and the productivity and the effectiveness will go up initially. But then all of a sudden people start thinking that, oh, they're losing something or whatever, or this isn't going right or whatever. And the productivity and the effectiveness starts going down. And the biggest thing to understand about this chart, as a manager, is to know that every transformation goes through a dip. And Anderson, which is a consultant, they used to call this the valley of despair. So just as a manager, knowing that there's gonna be a downturn during this transformation and preparing for it will make you so much more valuable to the organization. And then you get into celebrating your successes and highly communicating what's going on and getting people ready for, hey, it's probably going to get worse before it gets better, and this is what to expect, but we're going to get over this, and highly communicate across all the employees, and that will get you through that. And then all of a sudden now, you'll look at exploring better alternatives. People will start accepting that, and then they get into and they institutionalize that change. And now that's the part of the way that we do business. But this is key, right? Resistance to change is a big, big issue, in transformation. And it's costly. Look at this. This is some information I brought in. It's a Meta Group survey. 53 companies out of 63 reported annual savings of over 5 million, with the median average savings of 1.6. So there's savings to be had when you bring this together, but it costs and it takes time, right? This is a little more about SAP and what you go through, and then you have to find out, well, what are you trying to solve? And then you put a business case together, and then you define the target, and then you implement, and then you collaborate, and then you improve this continuously. And sometimes, well, like I said, I think it took about 4 years to get it through Chalice. And look, in some cases, it's $1 million, $35 million in 7 years. So that really gives you a sense of what's going on. But for all you people looking at, an opportunity in business, if you get to be an SAP analyst or specialist, you can make some good money, right? So there's a lot of, here's just some employment figures around, what's going on there. So there's a lot of money to be made in this piece. Okay, so just so you know that. Let me see. That's I think that's about all that I have for you today. All right. So that's where we're at. Again, you've got the 4 participation activities, and the SciPoc is really going to give you an idea of how to improve the value chain. There's some of these questions that you'll find again in the Amazon group project. So if you do a great job on what you're doing, you'll have the template established and the understanding of the work all down pat and ready to do that particular assignment that's due on December the 6th. Okay, so that's where we're at. Any questions at all? No questions? Okay, so we'll call it an evening. And again, manage your routines, eat well, get a lot of sleep, and do a little bit every day, and it should get you through the end of this term. Okay? All right, I'll talk to you later.